All right, today's crazy. This woman who needs her daughter to be healed from this demon comes up to Jesus, asks for healing, and he straight ignores her. It's insane. You got to read this with me. Come on. Hey everybody, welcome to Bible Time. Craig here. Hey, we're just going to jump right in today. I'm feeling like jumping right in. Matthew chapter 15, starting in verse 10. Talking about what defiles a person. If you missed yesterday's, maybe go back and watch that, because it's kind of this whole setup where the Pharisees are asking about why are they not washing their hands, and then kind of Jesus hits them with this, like, your words, you honor me with your words, but your hearts are really far from me. And so he's sort of continuing on this thought, and so let's try and listen for God's heart here and what would be applicable to us and our hearts. So he says, and he called the people to him and said to them, hear and understand. I always love it when Jesus tells people to hear or listen. And this one's interesting. Like, if you don't understand something, typically you can't just make yourself understand it. Like, I don't understand rocket science. Well, just understand it. You know, you can't just make yourself, but it's not quite like that, you know? It's like there's something to many of the things that Jesus says where understanding is attainable for those that just seek it out. Simply seek it out. Simply show that you're passionate and you care about the subject matter, to dig in a little bit and say, what does that really mean? And then God gives the understanding, or the understanding is straight up just plain to see. But what it's really pointing out is that so many people, they just don't care. They don't care to dig in and say, God, what are you really saying? And what are you thinking? What do you care about? So anyway, let us be those that hear and understand. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but it's what comes out of the mouth. This defiles a person. So this seems like pretty obvious to us as far as like what we say is making us, would be wrong. This whole term of defilement, that was a term and a thing that they would have thought about. It kind of would, I don't know what it means to you. You probably don't use that word, but defiled means like you're put in a place that's sort of unworthy for a time of being in God's presence. Like, you're defiled because you have leprosy, or you've touched a dead body or whatever. And so you would then, if you're defiled, have to go through this process of being made right with God, of obtaining righteousness with God. And so that's what defilement is. And then for them it was like, don't eat certain foods, and that was the custom of the time, and God's commands for them for certain times. And so they really kind of made it more about following these rules and what's going in than, and this is of course playing off of where the last section was about them washing their hands. When that may be important, and it is important, but what Jesus is trying to say, what's more important is what comes out of you, because out of the heart the mouth speaks, and sometimes can spew just venom and anger and hatred and murder. Yet we also with our mouth, our voice, have the opportunity to line ourselves up with God and speak life and love and all that. But so Jesus is making a really important point here. It's what comes out of your mouth that really ultimately defiles you. Then the disciples came to him and said, do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying? He answered, every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be rooted up. Let them alone, or leave them alone. They are blind guides. And if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. But Peter said to him, explain the parable to us. And he said, are you still without understanding? Like, he's just like saying like they're blind, and so yeah, they don't get it because they're blind. And then Peter's like, well, explain it to us too. He's like, oh dude, seriously, you're not getting it either. I just told you to understand, didn't I? but you're still without understanding. And the truth is, we're just like Peter. We're just like the disciples. We lack understanding often as well. And we have to go to him. But it's better to seek out when you don't know than to pretend like you do know and not seek out. So he says, do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is expelled? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a person. For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. And these are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile anyone. Might make you sick, but it doesn't ceremonially separate you from God's heart. Isn't it interesting that for out of the heart comes evil? No, I suppose that's one thought. Evil thoughts. So out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, and slander. And this is so interesting that some of these so check it out. Slander actually is your words. False witness, that would be your words. And in a sense, evil thoughts, speaking them out, is your words. But murder, adultery, sexual immorality, and theft, like, are inherently more than just words. Like, that's action. Those are things that you have to do. You can't commit any of those with just your words. Other than the caveat that Jesus added the stipulation that if we think about a woman or think about somebody with lust, then we've committed adultery, which is really our thoughts. But anyway, the point is, think about this. He's describing that with what comes out of our mouth, these things come out of your mouth, and half of them are words and half of them are not words at all. But it just, again, continues to show the power of what we speak, because we start to speak it and then we're embracing it and then we go and do it. And if we tame our tongue and watch what we say, it will help us. But what's most important, what he's saying is, you have to get your heart healed. God has to heal your heart, because it's out of this place that all of these things flow. So, obviously the application is that we need God to really do surgery on our hearts. All right, let's move on. And Jesus went away from there and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from the region came out and was crying, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon." But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and begged him, saying, "Send her away, for she is crying out after us." And he answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." And he answered, "It is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire." And her daughter was healed instantly. This is one of the craziest passages in the New Testament, in the Gospels, in my opinion. It's so crazy to consider. If you were in that moment, if you were there, if you were this woman, what would you really have been feeling? And yet it's one of the most beautiful passages as well. So, I just want to say this. There's a book. There's a book called The Silence of God by Helmut Thielicke or something. I think that last name is spelled wrong, maybe in the first name. He was a German pastor or something like that, like during World War II. I think that's correct. Anyway, it was definitely sometime during World War II. He preached this message called The Silence of God, and it became this little book, and it's about this passage. And the application for the time was, where is God right now in the midst of this murder and chaos of Nazi Germany? And so, if you really want to read a good book on this section, read that book. It's absolutely amazing. But anyway, so some of the thoughts that I'm going to share with you here for the last few moments totally come from him, because he framed the way that I view this entire passage. So credit where credit is due. So a Canaanite woman, that's somebody that's not Jewish, and so the fact that Jesus said, "Great is your faith," is amazing. This is the second person that Jesus thought their faith was great, and both of them were non-Jewish for that matter, so it's crazy. But what got her there is her daughter is demon possessed or sick, or what is it? My daughter oppressed by a demon. Okay, so demon oppressed, and so she comes to him and she's like, Lord and Son of David, I'm recognizing who you are. And then she makes the request, and then watch this, the silence of God. But he didn't answer her a word. He ignored her. Can you imagine? You're like begging for your child. Like, this demon is attacking my child. Jesus, please. I know who you are. Deliver her. And he just... cold shoulder. That's crazy. You'd be like, what is wrong with you, Jesus? Like, aren't you supposed to be loving? And so he stays silent. Maybe it was an invitation to see if she would press. Maybe, I don't know. Like, what was it? Maybe it was... And then here we have the disciples trying to send this girl away. Like, Jesus, tell her to get out of here. Like, so then we have church folk trying to keep people away from the Savior. That's crazy. And then he says, hey, to be honest with you, I was sent for the lost sheep of Israel, Jewish people. But she stayed pressing. She came before him and she knelt, which is a form of worship, getting on her knees. She says, Lord, help me. And then he goes further with his insult. He says, dude, it's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Crazy. But she said, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. And this word right here for dogs here is like little lap dogs, like dogs that just sit on your lap and stay with you. And so this is like thick with worshipful language of, hey, no matter if it seems like you're insulting me or if it seems like you're pushing me off, I'm humble enough to say that I could eat from a crumb from your table and it will be good enough. Just a crumb from the table of God is going to bring the healing that I need. I'm not a special person. I'm not, here saying you owe this to me and look who I am. She takes the humble position. She basically worships him and says, if even just a crumb falls from your table, I know that it's going to be good enough for me. And he's like, wow, you have great faith. And then her daughter was healed instantly. And so it's a really, really tough passage to understand, but there's so much beauty in, and really, like, what do we do when we feel like God is silent, when we feel like God isn't there, and we feel like we're asking for something, and not only is he just saying no, he's just not answering us, or then he's saying no, it's not for you. And how do we deal with that? And this woman gives us such a great example of faith and persistence and crying out to him and worshiping him in humility. So lots to consider there, but yeah, that's it for today. We'll pick up again tomorrow in verse 29. I'll see you then.